Alright, today we're going to do the Lord of the Rings font, and I started with a letter-sized paper in Photoshop. I want to rotate this first so I can get it going horizontally. So I'm going to go Image Rotation, and 90, and that gets it going horizontally. Now I've already went and copied it from the internet, from my website, and I'm going to paste it. Lord of the Rings. Now then I want to make it larger, so Control T is our free transform keystroke, and make that nice and big. And then I want to get rid of all the extra stuff. But first I got to hit yes to my free transform. There it goes. Now I'm going to get rid of this kind of part down here. So an easy way to do that is grab our rectangular marquee tool, drag a box around it, and then add a mask. There we go. Next thing I'm going to do is grab my text tool so I can start typing. And the default is Myriad Pro, which is fine. Now there's two ways to start a type box. One is just to click the screen, and I just clicked right there. And you can see it gives you a little filler, the Lorem Ipsum filler text. And I'm just going to hit yes to that so we can see how that looks. And that typed it in at 12-point font. And the other way is to draw a box. So draw a box and then let go. And you can see it filled in a whole lot more. But the problem with this is I'm limited to this square. So if I want to make Lord this big, I'm going to have to move the square. And so that just adds an extra layer that we don't need to do. So you can see that, the difference in the two. One just looks like it has more text. But this one is unlimited in size. And that's really, really what I want. Now, if you typed up here and it disappeared, it could have gone underneath. So look at your layers. Always look at layers to see what's going on. I'm going to delete this one. I don't need it. And I'm going to work with this text box here. Now, as you can see with my text tool, if it still has a little square around it, that means it's ready to type a new layer. So if I clicked even right here, it would type a new layer. So if you want to rework on this layer, you got to make sure that that box disappears. Now you can rework on that layer. It's important to note the differences. Otherwise, you're going to have tons and tons of layers over here that aren't what you need. Okay. So I'm going to highlight all this and I'm going to type in Lord. There it goes. And that's very small. Okay. You could highlight this and you could pull down a bigger font to get you started. You can also, if you notice, if you hover right here, you can click right there and that can make it bigger and smaller. But I'm going to show you another way to make it bigger or smaller here in just a minute that's even better than those two right now. But let's first pick the correct font. There's a few different fonts in there. If you look through, you'll see, but the one I want is Perpetua Tilting MT. Okay, you can look at it, looks like that, and so that's what I want. I'm going to click on that. Came in all caps because that's the way the text is, which is great. The next thing I want to do is look up here at the options bar, and you have an option for bold, and you can see mine very skinny versus theirs, which is thicker, so I do want it to go bold. So there we go so far, looking good. Now then, here's some quick tips to help make this go quicker. If you're working on a text box like I am right now, I've got it highlighted or I'm just clicked on it, doesn't matter. If you just hold down Control, you instantly get your free transform control. Okay? So from here I can stretch it and make it bigger while just holding down Control. When I let go, I'm back at it. The other thing I want to point out when you're typing is if you just move your cursor away from this while you're still typing, it changes to our Move tool. See that? But I'm still on the text tool. So I can move this around without actually like hitting enter and grabbing the Move tool. I can do it just like this. And now I'm going to hold down Control and right now I'm going to focus on the R and kind of the D, the O and the D a little bit, but the R is kind of my central point right now. Oh, there we go. And once you got the R aligned, we'll get everything else sorted out real fast. So once I'm happy with this, I can hit enter and it's going to kind of stay the way it is. Now then, we need to open up our character window. And that is located there. It's located here. Okay? That's where we find our character options, or right here. So 3 ways to get that. I want to start off with the O, and as you can see, the O is too skinny. And if you look through here, all these different options, if you hover over them, it will tell you what they are. This is the font size, the leading, the kerning, tracking. This is for vertical scale, and this is horizontal scale, and this is baseline. And then there's other options like a faux bold and italics. And of course, you can change the font itself. But right now, as you can see, O needs to be wider, so that's this one right here. And I could plug in numbers. I could guess again. Let's say, 200%. Whoa, that's way too much. And you could try to guess again and guess again. But if you look, what I'm doing, I'm hovering right over this letter T. When you see that, I can click and drag and get that right where it needs to be. So even if it's way off, I can get it right where it needs to be. Now, I'm looking at the O on this side. It needs to align, so I'll just move my cursor down. Get the O perfectly aligned. Now that shifted the R and the D. But it didn't shift the O or R and the D in the sense that those 2 letters moved. It's just the space in front of the O moved, or it got wider. So this one right here will allow you to pull the R and the D back over a little bit. The tracking is what that's called. So I'm going to, again, click and drag to the left, and that slid that space smaller, which in turn slid the R and the D over. You can see I can do the same thing with the D, with the tracking. You could pull it down and try to guess, but I just like to click right there, and that makes it a lot easier. Now the L is going to be way off again, so let's work with the L. I'm going to start with, I can make it much, much taller. Now to drop it down here equal to that, that is the baseline shift. That's this one right here. So I'm going to drop that down, baseline shift. Looks like I made it a little too tall, so come back and shrink it up. Now then again, I'm going to move it over so I can align it just perfect. And that looks great on the height. Maybe a little bit of width here. And of course the space in front of the L is what's pushing everything over, so pull these guys back and aligned up. There we go. Now if I pull this down and hit enter, you can see we're pretty well lined up. Now you can use that same technique I just used and make a the layer. You can make an of the layer, and the way you make 2 lines is just like any paragraph. You just type and then click of and enter and the. There you go. Now to get the spacing all correctly on that one, here is where you'd get the spacing up and down. And they're center justified, and that's going to happen right up here. Center justify them. And then of course size and everything else is where you would get align that. And then you can use the same technique for rings. So you should only have 4 layers, one for this the, one for of the, one for Lord, and one for rings. Okay? Don't try to do rings on multiple layers, because see how they're connected here with the effects? That will throw things off. So I'll let you guys do the rest of the letters by yourself, the same technique I used Lord. Now I'm going to go ahead and make Lord look like this Lord with all the effects on here. I'm going to just delete of that and clean up my computer. Zoom in a little bit for you guys with Control Plus and align it like this. Now I need a black background, so I'm going to click on the background and I'm just going to add a solid color layer. Make it black. Alright, now then the good stuff. I'm going to click on Lord and I'm going to add effects. And that's right down here in our layers deal. That's the FX button. So click on effects. And you can just start by opening up this blending layer style box. Or if you know exactly what you want down there, for example, color overlay, you can click directly on that. Now, I'm going to start with color overlay. And if I just check the box, it will color overlay it or uncolor overlay it. But if I want the options for color overlay, I have to first click on that word and then that gives me the options here. And of course, I don't want white. I want to click on that and just come right over in this area and choose a gold. Now you can see anytime the color picker is up, as it is now, my tool gets switched over to the color picker. Okay, now I got a good gold. The next one I want to do is bevel and emboss. And as you can see, it gave me a little bit of bevel and emboss, but we need to do a lot. So let's go through these settings and make it look like Lord of the Rings. I'm going to pull down, and it is inner bevel. You can play around with some of these other ones and look and see what they do, but inner bevel is the one we want. Technique, hopefully you could look at that and guess. We want chisel hard. Okay, you can see it a little bit better now. The direction can go up or down, so that's really about lighting. So I'm just going to keep it up for now, and we'll deal with lighting right down here. Size is important. Look, yeah, now we're starting to look like Lord of the Rings. So I'm just going to make it where it's large enough to where there's no little flat spots on top of our letters like you see there. So just as long as it's big enough, it's good. And then soften, don't need any softening. Now this is where we deal with light. Light can come from different directions. And if you look at this here, if you look at our original, it's coming from down here going up. So that's where we want it. Now if you put it all the way on the outer edge, it looks weird. If you put it on the center of the lighting, it looks weird. So you got to make sure. I go about 1/3 of the way from the edge. There we go. At about, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock if this was a clock. You can see the numbers I did here, -49 and 32. Gloss contour, you can see what that can do. It can do some different kind of cool effects. But we're just going to stick with the original. It's fine. Now, to make ours look less like kind of painted yellow and more golden, this is where we're going to come in with here. And I will tell you, yes, we need both our opacities up to 100. And instead of white, we want the lightest yellow we can find. There we go. Already that looks a little better down here. And same with black. Instead of black, we want the darkest brown we can find. And already that looks a little better. Now if I come back up here to depth, that can increase the intensity of those colors. So we kind of skipped over depth earlier. Now I'm coming back to try to match the intensity of the depth, and that has to do with the lighting and how that works. So there's our bevel and emboss. Now then, our Lord looks brand new. Their Lord looks like it's been through Middle Earth. So it's time to get chipping away at this to give it that same look. And that's just going to come with a mask. It's like erasing little bitty parts, but we're going to use the mask. So click on Lord, make sure you're on Lord, add your mask, and then we're going to grab a paint brush. Okay. Now, if I were to use this brush down here and use my black and color, yeah, it takes it away, but it looks really weird because I have a zero hardness brush that's, you know, kind of fuzzy, and the size is big, so that just doesn't work at all. So we need to play with our brushes to get the right kind of brush that can help us out the best. And I'm going to grab this brush and open up here is where you'll see your different brush options. Okay. Now to get the brush that we need, I'm actually going to come over here and go to Legacy Brushes. This is some of the old brushes in the old Photoshop files. And there's a good one in there I like to use called the chalk brush. So open up your brushes here, open up it here, and go to Legacy Brushes. And then hit OK. And that added Legacy Brushes down here in the bottom. And when I open that up and scroll down, you'll see a bunch of different ones. And we're just going to go with the default brushes and scroll even down in there. And then you should get, it's pretty far away down there, chalk brush. Yeah, here it is. Chalk 11, chalk 17. It doesn't matter. They're all the same. Those are just different sizes. And we'll play with the size ourselves. So pick any one of those chalk brushes. And if I make it really big using the keystrokes, the little bracket keys next to the letter P, you can see what that brush kind of looks like, the shape of it. I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer, click with red. So you can see it's just kind of a rough brush, and that's exactly what I'm looking for because we got rough going on up here. So I'm undoing that, Control ZZ. Now I'm back to my mask, make sure I'm on my mask and got black. Now, using those bracket keys, I can come in now and just barely hit the edge of the Lord of the Rings, and that'll create those divots. Now if I take away too much, I'm like, oh, I got a little carried away there. I can just switch back to white and paint it back in a little bit, and then switch back to black. And the way I'm switching, you can click this right here, or I'm switching using the letter X. The letter X is the switcher. Now let's look at this divot right here for the long part of the L. Let's manipulate this brush to make it look like that. And you can open it, what we need here, or as you can see it opened up here, or it's underneath brush settings. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to flatten and lengthen this brush so I can paint it in that shape. So here, this guy will let me rotate it. This guy will also let me flatten it. And if I space this out just so we can see the brush, you can see how it's getting flattened. So flatten it and get the right angle. I'm kind of looking up there at the Lord, get the right angle. I'm going to put the spacing back so it colors the proper way. And now then I can use the bracket keys to match it up to my Lord, or their Lord, and make sure it's the right size. And then just come back down here with my black. Click, 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 and got that taken away. Switch it back to normal and just kind of take away some of that there. Look through, this side of the L is pretty straight. The top needs a little bump, bump, bump. Now you'll just go through and finish out your Lord just like that, just kind of taking away divots. You can see that this is a little long over here, so we need to cut that out a little bit and just go through and match it all up. Now when you get to rings, you'll need to make a new mask for rings, and of course I don't have it, but that's one mistake. People start coloring over here on the Lord layer, but it's not on the right layer, so make sure you're on the right layer. And following those few steps, by the end you should have a nice looking Lord of the Rings. Now I'm not expecting perfect, but just do the best you can with these new program and new tools we've learned.